Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know that's you live, Chair.
Thank you, Tom. Well, good evening and welcome members, officers and those members of the public here at the meeting and those joining us virtually. Item 1, apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Chair. Pumpkin, Hawkins, Pepple, Shepherd and Tinsley.
Thank you.
Chair,
Sorry, could you just repeat that and just speak up a little?
Apologies for absence have been received from councillors Bart, Hunkin, Hawkins, Pepple, Shepherd and Tinsley.
Okay, moving on to item 2, to approve the minutes of the last meetings, of which we have 4 sets, I'm afraid. So we'll start with the 3rd of March, and I'll run through them page by page, starting with the first page, page 1, page 2, page 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Someone like to move that? Okay. Okay, all in favour, please show. And against? And abstentions? Thank you.
That's 23-4 and 4 abstentions, Chair.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, moving on to the minutes on the 17th of March. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. No questions? Someone like to oppose them? Councillor Inch, seconded by? Yeah, sorry, Jane is second. All in favour, please show. Against? Abstentions?
23-4 and 3 abstentions, Chair.
Thank you. And then we've got the extraordinary meeting, I believe it was, on May the 19th, first meeting, page 1, page 2, page 3, 4, and 5. Looking for a proposal for that. Councillor Locke? Yeah, Councillor James seconded. All in favour, please show. Against? And abstentions?
Chair, 25-4, 1 abstention.
Thank you. And then the last set on Monday the 19th, which was the AGM, on page 1, 2, page 3, 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. I'll move them from the chair. Councillor Thomas, I believe. All in favour, please show. And abstentions?
25 for and 1 abstention, Chair.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 3 on your agenda, public contribution. We have no public speakers. So item 4, declarations of interest. So you all know the score there now. If there is any items you have to declare, please do so when the agenda item comes up. Item 5, agreement between items part 1 and part 2. We have a part 2 item this afternoon, this evening, so I'll propose from the chair that we move into part 2 at the appropriate agenda item. Councillor James seconded. All in favour?
It's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Item 6. I have one item, I believe, which I scribbled something down on, which it was to do with came to my attention quite late on in the afternoon. The fire service, the South West Ambulance Service, apparently are considering the withdrawal of the co-responders that exist currently in our rural communities. And I think this is something that clearly we should be concerned about, because it could be a great loss and it could have quite catastrophic consequences. Councillor Hodgson, did you have anything you wanted to speak on? Because you did actually have a little bit of information on it.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have been notified by the new chair of the Adult Health and Scrutiny Committee of the county, Jess Bailey, that she was very dismayed with this news, and she's written to us all saying that she's asked for the CEO to attend the first meeting of this committee on the 14th of July to give everybody an opportunity for members of the committee to ask questions and scrutinise the decision-making by the trust in this regard. So if any of you have got pertinent questions that you want raised at that meeting, please forward them to me and I will raise them on your behalf. Because I think it is something we should all be very concerned about. Because there is a proposal that these co-responders, yes, are going to be replaced by volunteers, trained volunteers. But again, if it's not broken, why are we fixing it with yet more reliance on the voluntary sector? Now, the voluntary sector does a sterling job in our communities, so I wouldn't want it to be any reflection on their ability. But yet again, there's an expectation that the voluntary sector will fill the gap, and I'm really concerned about that, especially in our more rural communities where we know ambulance turnout times are not reaching their target yet. They are struggling to do that, but the fire brigade and the fire officers can respond much more quickly. And it may be the difference for some people of being successfully treated or not. I won't, I don't want to make it too catastrophic, but it could be for some. So I'm really concerned about this. So I'm happy to raise that. I represent not just Torridge on that committee, but all the districts in Devon. So I'm the district nominee at the moment.
Thank you, Claire. Councillor Locke.
Yeah, I mean, I'm Clark Langley Town Council, this was brought up to our attention a fortnight ago, and we had the co-responder from Hackney Fire Brigade come to our meeting. And a very useful piece of information he brought to us for the last 5 years, how many times the co-responders have been brought out, but whether or not you could have claimed that from Bideford Fire Station, I don't know, but it is going to be phased out over the next 12 months. And we also asked the question, who financed it, and no one was able to tell us.
Well, it was sorry, I can come back on that. It was a partnership with the South West Ambulance Service Trust. So whether they were funding it in part, I don't know.
Councillor Mrs. Branton.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I must say, I totally agree with both of you. It's a very retrograde step in terms of public safety. And the point is that these are professionally trained medical trainees. They're not, Councillor Whittaker and I have worked in the voluntary sector, and there's a great deal of goodwill and first aid training in the voluntary sector. But in no way does it replace the sort of professional training that the present co-responders get in the fire brigade. And speaking of somebody who's identical twins, life was saved by somebody who turned up. It wasn't a fire person, but even so, the first person that got there saved her life because they had medical training and could deal with a very serious situation. And I think when that happens, you can't just rely on volunteers and amateurs. You really do need the professional.
Very briefly, Councillor Andrews, please.
I'll be very quick. I had the fire brigade out. They were able to give me gas and air on occasion when I was in excruciating agony. I'm quite sure that volunteers would not have gas and air. So I would very much in favour of the fire brigade doing that.
Okay, well, there we are. Contact any concerns if you forward them to Claire. She'll pass them on to the relevant committee, and I'm sure she'll be very robust in her defence of that item. Okay, moving on then to item 7, the public health and community safety commercial vehicle replacement, pages 41 to 44. I believe Bill is in there.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Councillor.
Could you just tilt the microphone?
Sorry.
You may need to raise it because you're so tall there.
I don't want to fiddle with it. I'll just bend down. Thank you, Chair, and good evening, councillors. Purpose of this report is to obtain resolution to purchase 3 replacement vans for the Public Health and Community Safety Service on the Capital Vehicle Replacement Programme. Before I start, I should just point out a correction for the report. Some of you eagle-eyed may have noticed that the maths is slightly off in the report in places. This is because, so what I've done, and I'll come to this when I get to the finances, is the capital replacement value available to us is 52,500. The amount to replace the vans with equivalent diesel vans is about 2,500 more than that cost. So we'd be here asking for 2,500 roughly in any case. The £10,000 figure, and I'll come to the exact figures later, the £10,000 figure is the figure over and above that 2.5. So what I'm actually asking for instead of 10 is £13,000. So I will come to the exact figures towards the end, but apologies for any confusion caused with that in there. So existing vehicles are 8 years old, and Torridge District Council depreciates its vehicles over an 8-year period, and our 3 vehicles are due for replacement in this financial year. You'll see in the table here that the cost to replace with electric, as I've just said, is £13,069.84 more than is currently in the capital replacement programme for these vehicles. And to be clear, that's 10,483.84 more than replacement with diesel vehicles. So that's where the maths comes in, and apologies again for that. So the vehicles are based at Riverbank House, and we've recently had some upgrades to the EV charging infrastructure there. So there are now EV chargers available for these 3 vehicles, plus some additions, but for these 3 vehicles certainly. And the proposed vehicles have been trialled by officers as well as being trialled extensively and now used by the estates team as well. And our officers have trialled the estates team vehicles. They are suitable replacement vehicles and do everything we need them to do. There's no range anxiety or any issues with the usability of the vehicles. Toyota have a dealership in Barnstaple locally, which will save us. At the moment, we travel to Exeter with some of our vehicles for servicing. We don't have an exact life cycle cost comparison. However, our vehicles currently is an estimated spend of about £290 a month on diesel, which the equivalent mileage in electricity, notwithstanding our PV input from the roof at Riverbank House, the equivalent cost is around about £115. So significantly cheaper just on the day-to-day running. Plus there are savings on servicing costs, etc. And as I say, they do the job that our officers need them to do. So in conclusion, the purchase of these vehicles to replace the current vehicles meets council operational and sustainability objectives. And if they are replaced with their diesel equivalents, the opportunity may be lost for at least a further 8 years. Thank you. Recommendation is that the proposal be resolved to acquire the replacement vehicles, electric replacement vehicles, as detailed in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask, is there going to be a disposal of these vehicles, or can they be transferred to another area for additional work that isn't what they're doing now, basically? I just waited for all the financial provisions about disposal and that, so I just wondered if we can use them, or are we going to sell them?
This is the disposal of the existing 3 vehicles.
Cool.
Yeah, we haven't come to a conclusion on that yet because we haven't started the process of purchasing or anything. So obviously, we will look at what we can do with those. They probably will not go elsewhere in the council because, as I say, they've passed their useful lifespan with the 8 years now. They're starting to cost a bit more at servicing times and everything. They've had a bit of a hard life, let's put it that way.
So are you saying there's no market for them whatsoever?
Well, they will probably be sold, so there will be a value to them to recoup, yeah.
Okay, but you haven't offset that against here?
No, because we don't know what that will be.
Right,
So,
thank you.
thank you.
Councillor Haynes.
As climate lead, I'd like to congratulate the officer on recommending these vehicles, and I'd like to propose that we do go ahead with them. They fit into our climate targets. We've purchased other electric vehicles which have proven to be reliable and very useful. Running and maintenance costs will be significantly lower. So I think we should approve it. I'll just seek second.
Chair, thank you. At the risk of straying into the operational area, I note that 2 of these vehicles have only done 39,000 miles each, and they are some 7 years old, which averages at 4,800 miles per year, which for a modern vehicle is nothing. Are we absolutely sure that we need 3 vehicles? Because your mileage doesn't actually support that. Are we quite sure that we shouldn't be buying 2 vehicles rather than 3?
Thank you. From an operational perspective, all 3 vehicles are in use daily. So it's not the case. So this team deals with fly tipping and investigations of fly tipping, and part of the work of that team is the physical act of picking up those fly tips, which is why we need vehicles rather than some of their officers use their own vehicles. But for this, we can't. And those jobs are getting larger. The clean bags, which is the ones we pick up and we'll take to the waste depot. We need a vehicle for dogs and stray dogs, at least 1 vehicle for that. We usually have 2 kitted out for such, because that certainly takes 1 vehicle, sometimes takes 2. And we have vehicles we need for the processing public health funerals and various other visits that we do that require cargo to be put in the vehicle of sorts. So I would say absolutely we need the 3 vehicles. even though the mileage isn't that high, some of the jobs might be around Bideford and locally, and that is acknowledged. But nevertheless, they are still out and about doing the work of the council.
Sorry, I believe Councillor Lovell, did you have your hand up just now?
I was just trying to second.
Oh, sorry, I just saw a little hand go up, I couldn't quite picture of it was yours or not. Councillor Lovell?
Still like second.
Yeah, well, Councillor Newton made my points I was going to make. The mileage is nothing on these three vehicles. I think they're being changed now just because it's 8 years coming up that we've had them. That's the only reason. And if you go in Riverbank, you'll see the vans are parked in the car park there very often. And I've often gone in there and thought, well, these vans just stood here doing that. And as you say, the mileage is very low on them. So why, just because there's money in the budget, and normally we change them after 5, 7, 8 years, why do we have to change it? We don't have to. These will run on diesel engines, they'll run on for a long time. And I take it they have been, well, I know they are, in service regularly when they should be. But there's been no big bills with them, there's been no maintenance costs over and above the extra of the ordinary.
Councillor Thomas? All right, Gibson.
Yes, I echo Councillor Newton's point in terms of doing EV vehicles of very low mileage. On the budget, you've not mentioned anything, you explained why you've not mentioned it, you've not done the finances yet. But at that low mileage, you'll expect to get a considerable amount of income for those vehicles, which could, I'm sure, look, the budget that you've estimated, the cost between people and electric. Obviously, electric, such low mileage is the way to go, all makes sense. But does the council need to buy them? They could easily rent these vehicles and save the capital budget, spend it on something else. Lease them.
Well, from my own personal point of view, for what it's worth, I very much take the point that Councillor Leather has made. You know, these are relatively low mileage vehicles. They've got a good number of healthy years left in them before we can think about, expecting large bills, clutches, gearboxes, and whatever like that. So I don't think there's any urgent need to do that. But over and above that, we're talking about this £10,483 extra that we're going to pay for an electric equivalent. I'm not sure, I don't think it's worth spending that 10,000. These are vehicles that clearly don't have an awful lot of use. And if you're not using these vehicles an awful lot, I don't really see that as a justification for going electric with them. You know, that the supposed saving on, whatever environmental damage you're going to do is going to be minimal. And, the book is still open on quite how clean these electric vehicles will end up as being. I'm personally a skeptic, as you can probably tell. I don't think the benefits are anything like as green as what we are led to believe. And I think in the fullness of time, that will come out to be seen, that they potentially are a bit of a problem that we have in the future. So I won't be supporting, if we're going to have new vans, it would be for 3 new diesel vans, not spending £10,000 extra. But I take the point that Councillor Leather made. I don't think we need 3 extra vans at this time. We get at least another 2 years out of all 3. Mr. Thomas.
Yeah, it's 50,000 miles is considered a new van when it comes to diesel engines these days. So I'd like to propose that we scrap this idea and we roll with them for another 4 years. Because to be honest, we probably won't be here in 4 years' time anyway. And we're certainly not going to be here by the 2030 to meet the net zero budget. So that's my proposition. If there's anybody like to second it.
Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just curious, when you say that if you don't do it now, you can't do it for 8 years. Can you explain, are you locked in? You must be locked into something, but I don't understand. Thank you.
That was just referring to the capital replacement programme, and it wasn't that we can't do it, it was that we may lose the opportunity.
Thank you.
Councillor Brenton.
Well, sure, I think if we had a better valuation or ideal valuation of these existing vans, I think that would help the argument for going to electric, I think, because really, why don't you phone up and we buy any car.com? I mean, straight away they'll give you some idea of what it's worth, so that we have some idea, because as has been pointed out, it's such low mileage, and for a commercial vehicle, there's always a big market for commercial vehicles, so, you know, if that was a reasonable price that we could get for them, then I think members would be more amenable towards putting the money into an electric ones, for all the right reasons.
I think they're probably worth about £1,000 a piece,
How much?
about £1,000 each.
Really?
It's an 8-year-old van. I bought similar vans off of Pat Williams before, you know, newer than that, but with higher mileage for, you know, similar money.
I think that the lower running costs make it a really seriously good idea. And the lower repair costs and everything.
All right, so
Thank you, Chair. Just one last point. Is there any scope? Obviously, some of the work you do is quite messy, I suppose, and the vans take quite a bit of a hammering. Is there any scope to buy 2 vans and keep 1 van for the really bad pickups and have 2 new vans, or is that a stupid idea? Phil, you might have some thoughts on that.
So yeah, they do have a hard life, as I say, and we do pick up some, yeah, they do sometimes get a bit messy in the back. The reason that we would like to replace all 3 vans at this point is because, as I say, they have had a hard life and they're showing it. So they're going in for maintenance a lot more. I don't want to over-egg that because, yeah, they haven't got to any of the large maintenance costs at this moment in time, but they are going in for maintenance. We're losing more days to that. I believe it says in the report that we lost 12 days across the financial year to maintenance issues with the vans. Then that is going up. So I think we're just seeing that we're at that place in the cycle of the vehicle replacement. And actually, we would like to now just replace them all with the new vehicles so that we've got, you know, that guarantee going forward. And obviously, the lower running costs for us are a bit of a no-brainer going into that.
Councillor Haynes?
Yeah, I'm just sort of interested to know why you're applying this argument now to these particular bands when we've changed other bands in this council. You know, we've approved a capital programme. Why didn't Councillor Leather apply his argument to the HV waste vehicles, for example, which have been replaced? I mean, we have a capital programme which we've approved, but I mean, setting that aside, I mean, the overriding issue is that these vehicles which are being proposed are far less damaging to the environment. And we need to take the word of our officer that the vehicles needing replacement do need replacement because of the state of them. I mean, look at post office vans, for instance, they get bashed around and they get replaced fairly regularly. So I think we should go ahead.
Right, so you proposed Councillor Haynes, and I believe, did Councillor Lavelle second that motion?
Yeah.
You did. Councillor Thomas? I
will second Councillor Thomas's recommendation.
that we keep the existing vehicles and not buy any. Okay, no other, we'll go to the vote now, and the first one is to go with the officer's recommendation to buy 3 new electric vehicles. Been proposed and seconded. All in favour, please show. Against?
Okay, that's 8, 4 and 20 against, Chair.
Maybe the second one. Okay, that's clearly lost. Thank you. Moving on, item 8, update on the financial procedure rules, procurement threshold, pages 45 to 102. Peter Hudson is going to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, councillors. So this is a quick report just to update the financial procedure rules. So the financial procedure rules go alongside the contract procedure rules. So back in February this year, the Procurement Act came into effect and full council updated the contract procedure rules. And this has largely changed some of the thresholds to in line with sort of other districts and county recommendations to make the new act sort of a little bit easier for the team to implement. So going alongside that, because the financial procedure rules works alongside the contract procedure rules, we need to update these as well. So they're largely unchanged. It's just the thresholds within the financial procedure rules that refer to the contract procedure rules that have been changed. So it's all there in the report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Is there anything significantly different from the rules that we've currently got?
No, all that's changed is the contract thresholds, which have already been approved by full council in the contract procedure rules.
Thank you. This has been before audit and governance on the 22nd of April, where we scrutinised it, and I'm happy to support the recommendation.
You're going to move it?
I'm going to move it, yes.
I'll second it from the chair. Sorry, you want to speak, Councillor?
I just wanted to get an explanation about one of the phrases in there, page 93. It's time to find it.
93, page 93.
There's a phrase that I don't understand. I just keen to. It refers to something as a terrier. I don't know quite what that is. It's something to do with hopefully the collie, but if it's not, I mean, there's a phrase here about terrier.
The only terrier is a property reference. There used to be a terrier system. That's the only thing I could think of.
Is that what it is then?
Possibly, probably, most likely, I would imagine on the
6.7.1.
Oh. Because I'm with the phrase, I'm just wondering what exactly it meant.
Yeah, I believe it refers to the terrier system, so it's a terrier reference, just a reference number for each property that the property manager maintains.
Says that
Okay, thank you.
the estate manager shall maintain a terrier record of all land and buildings owned by the council. Okay, it's been proposed by Councillor Haggett. I second it. All in favour, please show. Please adopt the policy.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Item 9, Rural England Prosperity Fund Investment Plan, pages 103 to 108. And we have Ms. Fuller to present this report. Thank you, first.
Thanks, Jim. Still in the system already. Members, can you hear me in the far corner? Members, can you hear me in the far corner now? In this case, I'll apologise. I will keep this very straightforward. This is a report on the Rural England Prosperity Funds. The primary element of this is in terms of the close zones that members had previously supported. I'll confess that this is an example of one of the rather strange funding processes that Sean and I have had recently, and fear we might end up having a few times over the course of the next year while systems are being worked out. In effect, this was a funding stream that previously came directly to Torridge. This year, in existence of the new Devon and Torbay Combined Authority, it was shifted straight from MHCOG to the Devon and Torbay CCA. At that point, the first mindset from the CCA was that they would lead, they would administer, and the initial proposal was for a grant programme that would cover the entirety of Devon, but with no sense of ring-fenced for areas. So each area, despite government having provided a certain degree of allocation, would not be guaranteed, well, to a certain extent, wouldn't be guaranteed a single penny. All of the districts at that point pushed back quite hard. The only problem that created was that it then left a very, very short time period when there was a realization that actually the districts were not going to just allow that sense. Hence, we were given, I think, 5 days to turn around the proposal. The proposals within this report were therefore based on existing projects that had been scoped or were in existence from other activities and other sort of strategic commitments, or in the case of the play area upgrades, where work through the play area strategy had been ongoing to make sure that actually engagement with those communities had taken place. The key element, as I mentioned, is that of play zones, which is a slightly circuitous process on this, with members previously having been informed that the funding that was being provided by the Football Foundation, Councillor Piper, feel free to correct me at any point on this one, wouldn't have been able to deliver in time for the Rural England Prosperity Fund last year, but members had approved £105,000 towards. That was then repurposed to avoid that money being returned to MHCLG, and now can be repurposed from reserves and the savings that achieved elsewhere. However, as is sadly inevitable, costs in that intervening period have gone up, which is why there's a small additional financial allocation on that. However, again, Dawn, please correct me on this. I believe that if members approve that, then the process with the Football Foundation can actually get started in earnest tomorrow, with kickstarting further surveys to see those three facilities actually delivered. It's probably enough whittling on from me. Over to members.
Yeah, can I ask one question? Torrington Football Club have taken over the tennis courts. Are they taking over the extra playing service, the football, or is it the play zone with play equipment on?
Chair, I can say.
Please, Sean.
It'll be changed into the play zone area, so that where the tennis courts that are now out of use will be, that's where the play zone will sit, and the football club will administer that.
Yes, sure. Yeah.
Well, part of the rationale, actually, for some of these things actually came from the last time we presented the feedback report on the shared prosperity, rural prosperity work, and I think it was actually Councillor Locke who made the comment that she's disappointed that rural prosperity funding wasn't actually used in the rural communities. So that's why we looked at play zones through, but not just that, the play areas in some of our most rural communities. So the other thing was we had to find projects that could be delivered within the timeline, guaranteed to be delivered within this 12-month window. And you wouldn't believe how difficult it is to find a project. So you can't start a project now that you can guarantee will be delivered in 12 months. So it's things that we know we can do within that 12-month window. Thank you.
Councillor Piper.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to speak as lead member for leisure. Touching on the play zones, I think we're all very well aware of the play zone project. The officers have done tremendous work on it. I've spoken in favour of the project before. It has been a great example of working with parish councils, working with communities, and it's a real great opportunity for Torridge to lead. With the management going forward, I've been really enamoured by the whole process. The one problem has been funding, piecing together the funding. I had a bit of a hissy fit probably back in spring because one thing fell out as another thing came in. Football Foundation, from what I can tell, have been fantastic all the way through in sort of holding on and realising we have these challenges, but also the officers have been fantastic. How they, in my head, I got to the point of just make it work somehow, and I feel like they have. To get us to this point, obviously, it's disappointing sometimes when the costings comes back a little bit more because of inflation and things, but we're so close. The funding, you can see the figures there. The amount of funding from Football Foundation is staggering. So please don't make me go back to communities and tell people why they're not going to get play zones again, because we're that close because of the complicated things that Chris has just gone through, CCAs and rural prosperity funding and who decides and this. Nobody cares about that on the street. They want to know that these play zones, which we really need, are going to happen. And just touching on, I was really pleased to see the play area upgrades in some of the villages. I think they're really, really important as well. So that's from my perspective, I think that's a great thing to see. I don't know so much about the other two projects, but I hope we can back this and push on with some stuff. Like Sean says, exactly the point. It's so frustrating when you've got such a great body of work and then you have such short timescales to get things done. And if we say yes now, I know there's teams, the Football Foundation are absolutely champing the bit, put plan applications in and get this project going. So hopefully we can, all get behind it. Thanks.
Councillor Hicks, first, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a member of this council for a very rural ward, 10 parishes, I note that this is the Rural Prosperity Fund, and all the money is scheduled to go to what we call towns. Having said that, we would suggest that we prefer it to be spent on potholes out in the countryside, but that ain't gonna happen. And we accept the officers couldn't do it. If we look at it logically, I can tell you that the Harbour Board has been pressing for some time to have these fountains put right. They were good when they happened. Even we country folk could go in and see them when they were. So I hope that this can go forward.
Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you, Chair. The play zone bit of the report, Chris, is excellent. And I know people who work hard and we missed out in Northern, but we quite understood why, so that wasn't a problem. The fountain, right. There are lots of people wanting the fountain back. I mean, I personally think it looks like a ship discharging its bilges, and I do worry about the car parked on the quay. I really do. It isn't the cleanest of water, let's face it. And of course, it only ever really works when the tide's really high enough. But the thing I'm worried about is because it was damaged in the past in various ways, and there's no actual report here, perhaps you can give us one, which tells me that this 60k, which is not a lot of money in the scheme of things, is actually going to work. Over to you.
Absolutely, and as someone who was thrown out of GCSE physics, my engineering skills were somewhat limited on that front, so I won't go into too much detail on that. What I will say is that the critical thing about the system, and partially around the 60,000 to it as well, is that every assessment that's been done of that Tide fountain comments in a sort of slightly tone of voice on how over-engineered that system was. Highly overcomplicated, and particularly, which is why it effectively wasn't then able to be fixed at the time, because it would have required specialist parts to have been made, and effectively modern technology, I'm informed, has enabled this to move forward in a far more straightforward solution to actually be introduced to achieve that kind of tidal fountain without it then getting kind of caught in as many issues as it was last time. There's been a number of people and companies looked at it, including starting in terms of looking at possible procurement.
So you're fairly confident you can do it within budget then?
I'm not.
Otherwise, you're going to come out of your pocket.
Otherwise, I'll be coming back.
Any extra you're going to pay for. You're going to come back, Jane?
I'd like to, yes, because thank you for that, because I can remember the conversations at the Harbour Board, and I actually wondered about this, and I actually went back to the Harbour Board minutes, believe it or not, Councillor Hicks, to try and find some information and couldn't find any. But that aside, can I move on to your next thing? It was one little tease, wasn't it? Really trying to work out what wayfinding in the public realm was. Well, I knew what the public realm was. I didn't really know what wayfinding was. I do now. Thank you. And it's lovely. I can understand what you're trying to do, but it'd be really good to know where you're trying to do it. Because if you're trying to enhance town centres, anywhere, I think some of our councillors would probably like to have a role in that somewhere along the line.
Happy, Councillor Whitaker. And Councillor Whitaker, to a certain extent, this goes back to the conversation that you and I have had recently around how actually we look collectively at the townscape in Bideford. It's one of those frustrating ones that when wayfinding is effectively how you work out how to move yourself away around a place, which sounds very straightforward. In every single report that we ever have done looking at Bideford, I have that impact on some people. In every single report, it comes back that people find it difficult to find their way around Bideford, don't know where anything actually is when you go in for the first time, and that it all feels very antiquated in terms of things like the signage. Now, this is where this is an opportunity, because realistically, it's very difficult to find funding sources for this kind of work. And so actually, it's a relatively easy kind of win to give the place a bit of a pep up. And also, and this connects back to the shared prosperity reports that members had previously approved, to start changing things collectively across the town and start linking it, for example, to more strongly around the maritime heritage, to start linking it a little bit more around some maritime futuristic and innovation opportunities that are coming forward, and give the place a more distinctive sense that anchors to that heritage, rather than it just being, which is the technical term.
Can I just say thank you, Chair? And if you'd written that up for us, perhaps I wouldn't have had to ask the question.
I'll still keep it brief.
I think they're gonna be even more confused, but never mind. Councillor James?
Yeah, I was just going to move the recommendation.
Oh, sorry, I do beg your pardon. Councillor Brendan. Do beg your pardon, Councillor
Oh, Lord, why not? Yes, to do with the fountain, actually, it was to commemorate the Queen's Golden Jubilee, and it was a real good feature in this town, quite unique. I remember reading when they were talking about doing all these regenerations of various towns across the country. There was one up north that their first feature was, let's put a fountain in, you know, and we got one here. And it really is a spectacular thing when it works, especially at night. You get the opportunity, you know, come in and visit a pub and, you know, have a look at the fountain afterwards when it's illuminated. And it really is good. And I think we haven't got many different features in this area of that type anyhow. And so let's get it going. And of course, it's complicated. Barclay Miller, former officer, was he was notorious for being over engineering, but never mind. He's off sailing around Turkey now, I think.
Councillor Bright, first of all.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, all these projects I think are brilliant, but it's just, I was just looking at the play zones, the total funded is nearly £1 million, but the contingency is only 20,000. Which I think there's a bit of a disparity that if something rolls over, even by a bit, surely it'd be a larger sum of contingency we need to put forward. I don't know, maybe you could explain that.
I think that was based, sort of, those figures based on our trying to build a contingency to our funding elements of that, as had been requested by kind of Football Foundation, rather than Football Foundation elements and their kind of requirement for a contingency.
So are they gonna, if there's a need for a contingency, are they gonna stump up extra money as well to match our contingency at 75%?
I think the answer is we'd have to enter a negotiation with them. Where we are with the Football Foundations, we've accepted the offer based on a percentage of the total project cost. And the sum is what we're setting out in the report here. If that varies, we will need to just, you know, in partnership with them, work out how that goes forward. But yeah, like it says, this is for our element in this.
Thank you. Councillor Hames?
Sure. Yeah, just as an aside, I think it's Councillor Christie, I was told, initiated the fountain project.
No.
No.
Councillor
Anyway,
big try.
yeah, I don't mind being naive, but the Globe in Torrington is desperate for funding. That doesn't come under the provisions on the category that's applicable here. Can I just ask? So, sure, okay, again, sorry.
I think I can answer that. I think we're working with the Globe to sort their funding issues out, so I'm not sure that requirement exists in the form you might think it does. So, well, I've been in discussion with them earlier in the week. I think they're going to be okay. They're going to be okay.
Councillor Mrs. Brenton, and then Councillor Piper, and then I'm going to take it as well.
Thank you. Well, actually, it was me, Councillor Haynes, who instigated the fountain. It was the Queen, the late Queen, Golden Jubilee. And the whole point about it was, you mentioned the high tide, was because it worked at high tide, it meant it cost pence to operate. Of course, we could put in a more permanent fountain system where we do have 2 tides a day. So, you know, that possibly is good enough. But if it's not, you know, we could put in a mechanism that would cost a little bit more money possibly than the renovation, have it operating more often on fun days and baits and festivals, who knows? But I must reassure you that in all the time it was working, and it was absolutely spectacular, no water went onto the quay, it all goes out into the river. So, and I've got photos to prove that, I wish I could. So it goes into the river, it doesn't go anywhere near people or vehicles or even dogs or even Toby the collie on the quay. So, you know, it's a spectacular thing to have in Bideford. And when it was working, everybody used to come down and crowd on the quay to see it. So, I mean, it is something worth having. Obviously, I'm declaring interest.
I would agree with you. We've just had the regatta and it would have been lovely to have it there.
And it was magnificent. I mean, there's no other word to describe it. It was something magnificent and spectacular for Bideford. And it was for the late Queen. It was supposed to be the Jubilee fountain.
I've seen that.
Yeah, well, it doesn't sound.
Last word from me, Councillor Piper.
I just wanted to second Councillor James's proposal to approve the
report.
The 3 recommendations in
Thank
the
you.
report.
Okay, let's take it to the vote then. It's been proposed and seconded. All in favour, please show.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Okay, moving on to item 10, to answer questions submitted under procedural rule A9. We have a question from Councillor Brenton. The question has been answered and you have the answer with you now. Okay, Councillor Brenton?
Supplementary.
If you were, yes, please.
Thank you. Okay, so as you can see from there, Red Earth have had 50,000. So originally, of course, we sold the horse to them for 5 magic beans, 200,000, I think. They're creeping up. Going to get it all back, aren't they? Plus, of course, they got the money from the taxpayer to do the wall as well. But what really strikes me, of course, and it was mentioned at the time of the planning application, is the shortage of parking over there on the water. At night, there's well over 30 cars parked over there. That's residents parking night times, because they work during the day, it's gone for a day. We also have the Tarka trail over there. Now, the planning application did say that, is there enough parking for these luxury second home come Airbnb type places? Because there aren't going to be any social housing or affordable housing there. It's all for the high market stuff, nothing else. So we need to put in place or start to negotiate how we can get some parking spaces over East of Water. Because if a Tarka trail is supposed to be something worth having and an attraction, as indeed it is really, but the access to it is very poor. It's bad enough now when these flats and that are being built or done, it'll be even worse. We do actually own some land in the far end, the Kynoff end. How much of that exactly we still own, I don't know where the cycle hire place is. I've got a feeling we own all of that actually. Plus the fact that Braddocks have got land along the water side as well, up for negotiation. I would have thought, after all, we were very generous to him over at the what's it called, the Spooky Nobles, or whatever it is, over at Westward Ho, you know, he took over that car park, didn't he? So that was good for his business. So I think he owes us a bit, you know, somewhere along the line, we should be doing some negotiation. So I asked, are we going to do anything, or going we just leave it so that people who come here with their bikes over to get their Target Trail, got to go to Riverbank? And I'll tell you now, parents with small children ain't going to park at Riverbank and escort them across to get onto the Target Trail over the bridge along there. They won't do it. When you could get easier access from Barnstable or Torrington, you know, good luck to Torrington, you know, great, you know, good for you. But in the meantime, Bideford is going to lose out. In fact, the whole tourist industry, when you base it on things like cycle tracks, which are really, really popular, as you know, you go to Cornwall, you know, the Camel Trail and the ones down in that area, you know, they really are worthwhile doing it, bringing a lot of revenue as well. And we're missing out here. Well, this, as you know, I'm totally opposed to these massive eyesores that are going to be built there in any case, but nonetheless, that's democracy. It was approved.
Thank you, Councillor Brenton, and I don't disagree with anything that you said, because I, again, was in opposition to that, but
Matter of information.
Councillor Haynes, yeah.
Yeah, just to sympathise with Councillor Brennan about connections of Target Trail with cyclists, but just to inform councillors that it's been topmost in our discussions at the Active Travel Working Group, which is part of this council, and we are currently talking with the county council about a design for better access to the Target Trail. So it's ongoing. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so a written response will be provided to Councillor Brenton. Moving on then, item 11, petition, final petition. Item 12.13, notice of motion. We've got one notice of motion which has been received from Councillor Haynes. Councillor Haynes, you have 3 minutes to present your motion, if you wish to.
Hi, thank you. I've got a short statement here about running. The government's planning and infrastructure bill is passing through Parliament, having just reached report stage. Part 3 of the bill relates to planning and nature, and its provisions have led to a considerable amount of criticism and alarm, not just the government's own advisory body, the Office for Environmental Protection, but also from over 30 national wildlife and environment organisations, including the RSPB, the Wildlife Trusts, and the National Trust, and from thousands of ecologists and nature professionals. Generally, there's serious concern that the proposal in Part 3 of the bill would allow developers to disregard a huge body of environmental legislation in return for paying a nature restoration levy. The environmental laws are fundamental nature protections that have stood the test of time. They protect bats, newts, spiders, otters, squirrels, dormice, red squirrels, I should say. They also protect wildflower meadows, peatlands, woodlands, etc. Any nature site or species could be seriously harmed under the provisions of this bill. Under Part 3 proposals, developers will pay into a fund, and then an environmental development plan, EDP for short, will be drawn up by Natural England, which would allow development to harm a particular feature of nature if improvements elsewhere create benefits for that feature overall. In other words, there will be no need to worry about a single site or specimen if the overall habitat or species population benefited. The concern is that this will give developers the ability to resort straight to offsetting wildlife harm, possibly at sites far away from the locality, rather than requiring them, as under the present mitigation system, to try to avoid harm on the development site. Critics say this system should be retained before proceeding to an EDP. Other concerns are that EDPs won't be informed by robust scientific evidence or controls to absolutely ensure that wildlife and habitats won't be harmed, that damaging development could go ahead with a promise of future wildlife benefits that may never materialise, and that there would be a weak system of monitoring which would not be held by under-resourcing of Natural England. EDPs could be subject to viability tests which could prioritise economic viability above protection of the environment, even on our most precious protected sites. The concern about Part 3 is expressed in the context of the UK's general poor record of protecting wildlife since the Second World War, leading to a situation where our country is one of the most nature depleted countries in Europe. Despite committing to nature recovery in the UK, little has been done to pursue this aim by successive governments. And regarding planning, the present government is falsely asserting that attention to protecting nature is holding up its programme of building 1.5 million homes.
Are you nearly there, Minister?
Just a couple of paragraphs. Citing the so-called £1 million bat tunnel related to HS2 as a gross distortion of the situation, and critics make a strong point that housing development should be progressed in harness with nature, not by excluding it. Not only is it a flourishing wildlife desirable in itself, but it's essential for the economy, for climate resilience, and for our health and well-being. Our council is committed to biodiversity, its carbon and biodiversity plan. We support the Biospheres Nature Recovery Plan. This council and North Devon are also pioneers in incorporating a 10% biodiversity gain requirement in the local plan. And we're striving to strengthen biodiversity policies in the local plan. If part 3 of the bill goes through, these important ambitions will be seriously threatened and affect adversely our prized wildlife standards. Last paragraph. At the recent report stage of the bill, the government declined to accept important amendments to part 3, which would have dealt with the concerns I raised. To quote a letter of government from the Wildlife Trusts and 31 other organisations, the current proposals in the bill threaten to dismantle essential protection for wildlife without the scientific safeguards, the delivery guarantees, or the positive plans to nature recovery that could justify such serious risks. Given these concerns from so many important bodies and the continued reviews of the government to acknowledge them, I ask you to add your voice by supporting my resolution.
Thank you. Well, you've now used up
the recorded vote as well.
You've now used up the 5-minute discussion that would have followed your.
Point of order, please.
Councillor Hackett.
Yeah, we've listened to this political grandstanding by Councillor Haynes, but we recently had a briefing session which discussed all this, and not yourself or one other Green councillor turned up to do the response to government. What's the point of doing this now when you could have attended that meeting?
Discuss that, I suppose.
Well, I'm not going to allow a long discussion on this. We'll be very brief, Councillor Bell, if you would please.
I object.
Sorry, you objected?
I object to the assertion that no Green councillor turned up to the.
I apologise if you were present, sorry.
Chair, can I ask a point of order? Where, if we minded to support this notice motion, where will it go? That's the point.
It'll be a letter presumably to Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, the problem, you see, the problem I have with that is that we're in correspondence with Chris Hinchcliffe, the MP, and he's put down a series of amendments to the planning bill, and they are obviously thought out, and they're with the support of other Labour MPs as well, to make sure that all these safeguards that we need for the environment are thoroughly debated.
They haven't been accepted, I've just told you that.
Sorry?
They haven't been accepted at report stage.
He hasn't finished with it yet. But the fact that he's put them down now, it is not dealt with yet. It's not finished yet. So it leaves me in a bit of a quandary, really, because obviously I would support the wildlife system. I really don't need any lectures about this. I think the Labour Party over decades have actually done a great deal for the environment. So
well, it's been suggested that this is referred to the JPPC
right
for debate. Is that sufficient? Is that sufficient, Councillor Haynes?
Sorry, Chair.
Is that sufficient if this is a report sent to JPPC to consider their input? Sorry.
It seems a shame we can't go to the voting.
Well, if you've got a second, we can go to the vote, but it won't be a recorded vote. You'll need 5, you have to get 5 members to have a recorded vote. So do you have 5 people? If the 5 members that are going to, it's been proposed and seconded, is there 5 people in total wants it to go to a recorded vote? That's 4. So that's not a repeat. 5. Okay, sorry, councillor Locke.
Can I just add, Phil, to the fire then, we had a members working group meeting on Thursday when Helen Smith presented all the major concerns that were being raised on the consultations.
Yeah.
But we discussed in quite great detail, the habitats, so I'm sorry, Councillor Haynes wasn't there either.
Sorry, Chair, can I just clarify, was the planning and infrastructure bill discussed in these particular provisions? My understanding it was other aspects of the government's proposal.
I'm not sure, but it's been proposed, seconded, that we have a recorded vote on this, so we'll go to the vote. So all of those in support?
Councillor Andrew,
Yeah, as written, yes, it's as written.
Councillor Andrews, Councillor Annie Brenton,
Abstain.
Councillor David Brenton.
Abstain.
Councillor Chris Bright.
Full.
Councillor Lauren Bright.
Four.
Councillor Bushby.
Against?
Councillor Dart.
Yeah. Four.
Councillor Elliott.
Against.
Councillor Gibson.
Against.
Councillor Gubb.
Against.
Councillor Hackett.
Against.
Councillor Hames.
Four.
Councillor Harding.
Against.
Councillor Hicks.
Against.
Councillor Hodson.
Against.
Councillor Inch.
Against.
Councillor James.
Against.
Councillor Leather.
Against.
Councillor Lavelle.
Four.
Councillor Locke.
Against.
Councillor Newton.
4.
Councillor O'Rourke.
5.
Councillor Pennington.
Against.
Councillor Piper.
Abstain.
Councillor Smith. 4. Councillor Thomas.
4.
Councillor Wheatley. 4. Councillor Whitaker.
Against.
Please.
11 for, 14 against and 3 abstentions, Chair.
Sorry, you say that again, sir?
11 for,
Yeah.
14 against
Okay.
and 3 abstentions.
Thank you, that's clearly lost then. Moving on to item 14, exclusion of the public. I'll second it. All in favour, please show.
It's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Give me
I'll
the
just
nod,
let you know
item.
when I'm on.